Happy Thursday, everyone. I am Jessie with Grow Nebraska. Welcome to January's third Thursday with Don Osborne. I'll let Don introduce himself here shortly, but in the meantime, I have just a couple of housekeeping items for everyone. Don't forget to mark your calendars for this year's Marketech Conference. Registration is now open, and we have speakers coming from across the country. If you were fortunate enough to be at last year's, you'll know exactly why we're telling people to get registered now. We will more than likely sell out this year. So April 15th, 2020, get it on your calendars. Registration is at marketechconference.com, and the full agenda is up. Also, just a side note, Grow Nebraska is a Grow with Google high impact partner. So if you're needing any assistance with your Google My Business web pages or anything Google related, feel free to contact us. My contact info will be available at the end. This month's featured Grow member is the Home Agency. They provide all lines of insurance for farmers and ranchers, whether it's crop, pivot, LRP, or PNC. They will help you prepare for the unexpected. So now it's time for the man of the hour. This is a casual webinar today, so if you have any questions while Don is presenting, please raise your hand, chat directly with me or the group, and we'll get it answered while Don is discussing that topic. If there isn't time to answer your question, our contact info will be available at the end of the presentation. Also, don't forget to mark your calendars for next month's T3 training with Bill Insel from SCORE Omaha. He will be discussing business plan basics. And registration is open for that now if you go to grownebraska.org. So Don, I'm going to let you take it away. Please give us a brief introduction before you get rolling.
Well, sounds good, Jessie. Thanks so much for having me here, and I'm excited to have a chat with everybody. My name is Don Osborne. Start my video. My name is Don Osborne. There we go. And my company is DBO Digital Marketing, and my company specializes in obviously digital marketing, but also broader strategic marketing, marketing plans, and traditional advertising, consulting, coaching, training, that sort of thing. And I've been doing that for quite a while. Prior to that, I've done a number of years at developing business plans and in new business development. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. Well, most people that I talk to, obviously everybody's doing marketing to some extent. And the reason I've created this program is because there's a lot of guessing around marketing. The title of this program is Marketing for People Who Hate Marketing. And basically, a lot of people hate marketing just because it's kind of overwhelming. There's a lot of tech involved. There's a lot of guessing games involved. There's a lot of ingrained beliefs and habits about how things used to happen. I have a lot of clients who are doing things just because that's how Dad used to do it. That has to do with print advertising, radio advertising, all of that. And most people have a website, and a lot of people don't know what to do with that website, how to make it work for them, how to make it actually cost effective. I hear it a lot. I already do marketing, but it doesn't work anymore, or it's an expensive guessing game, and I don't know if it works or not, or it's time to expand our market, and we're not sure how to do that. So a lot of common problems with marketing. Let's see. Those problems, either there's no marketing department, or it's not current, it's not effective, it's not cost effective, it's not organized, it's not digital, it's not structured, it's not active. The biggest one is people are concerned that it's not effective. They've got all this money that goes out into their marketing, and they have no idea if it's working or not. All those things, yes, indeed. So the solution is plans and systems. Boring as that sounds, it's basically a matter of taking this swirling mass of stuff and putting everything into the correct little box, and then organizing those boxes and coming up with a system to make it all work. So throughout the course of this, I'm going to explain how I approach that. The first thing that I do is with my clients is create a marketing toolbox inventory. And this is basically, I've got an exhaustive list, which we'll get into in just a moment, of all of the various marketing tools, whether it be, websites, marketing materials, logos, media contracts, all that stuff. I'll get into a list in just a moment. Once you know what is in your toolbox, then you can look at toolbox upgrades. So basically, if you're missing something, you upgrade it. Once you have all of your tools in place, the next step is to develop a marketing plan around that. Now, my approach to this is taking a 30,000-foot view of 9 areas is what I look at, and we'll see that in more detail a little bit later. But basically, that's a strategic plan for all the ways to use your various marketing tools. And then the final piece is an operations plan. So the operations plan is simply how do you implement the marketing plan? Who does what? How often do they do it? And this is set up in such a way that basically you have people throughout your company have been delegated to do different things. They put those into their Google Calendar, into their calendar, whatever they use, and then they've got reminders. So basically, you've got a lot of small moving parts that need to happen on a regular basis. None of it's really rocket science, but it's all things that need to happen, whether it be Facebook posts or blog updates or updating newspaper ads, that sort of thing. And again, we'll get into that in quite a bit more detail. So first, let's look at what's in your marketing toolbox. Of course, you can't do the job without the right tools, right? So some of the things we look at in no particular order are your branding, with that, and that includes, of course, logos, letterheads, that sort of thing. Next, we look at contractors. Do you have outside help, whether it's SEO, webmasters? You would be surprised how many people get involved in various marketing activities, and they hire somebody to do, say, a website, and then the lady that set that up leaves the company, and now the boss isn't quite sure how to access the website or how to make updates. Those contractors are important, and it's important to keep a handle on that. Next, of course, is your website, and this is something with a lot of moving parts. So what I do is I've developed a pretty comprehensive checklist on the functionality, the content, the back end, the meta tags, the how fast the website is, how well it's tracking. All these things, what I do is go through quite an extensive list to see just how well your website is doing. And sometimes, I can show my clients that their website's in pretty good shape. Other times we see that the website needs some major upgrades in terms of, what they're offering, how it's structured, what the flow is and such. The next one we look at is email marketing. Do you use email marketing? What platform do you use? Is it MailChimp or Constant Contact? Do you have effective opt-in boxes and that sort of thing? Next, we look at how well you're doing on review sites, and if you even track the review sites. So whether it's Google My Business, Facebook, Yelp, depending on what industry you're in, there can be a lot of different review sites. And those review sites do make a difference. Sometimes I'll have clients that discover that they've got a really horrible review that was left, a year ago, and nobody's ever addressed it. It's really important to stay on top of that sort of thing. No matter how good your company is, there's always going to be that one person that's going to leave a negative review. So it's important to address those things head on. Somebody leaves a bad review, you need to get on there and say, wow, sorry, thank you. Sorry, something got messed up, we'll fix it. Number 6, search engine optimization. There are all kinds of tools to measure this. But basically, can people find you online? People that don't know the name of your company, if they just put in your service or your product, are you going to show up on the first page of Google? And of course, there's all kinds of ways to make this happen within the back end of your website, your content, backlinks, meta tags, all that kind of stuff. And it's important to see where you're at. Next, we look at social media. Most people have a Facebook business page. Is it optimized? Is it set up properly? Do you have all the information in there that you need? And then we look at digital advertising. Are you using Google AdWords or any of the other various digital tools out there? By the way, this is kind of a long list, and not everybody needs to use all of these things. But we look at the big picture list and see what's appropriate for your company. And of course, when you're doing this yourself, again, you need to look at is it appropriate for the kind of product you sell. Surprisingly, I've worked with a lot of people in the kind of the industrial sector. And at first glance, they think, well, social media really isn't for us. We're not selling to housewives, is what they think. And quite often, it's surprising how wrong that is. Everybody's on Facebook, whether they'll admit it or not. Most everybody, and there is a way to target people that goes well beyond just casual viewers who are there to look at pictures of their grandkids. So next we look at traditional media, and this is looking at what you typically use for your old style advertising. Do you have a contract with the newspaper, with the local radio stations, billboards, that kind of stuff? Next is your lists. Do you have sales prospect lists? And even more importantly, do you have a current customer list? I'm always surprised when people don't. Your current customer list is a wealth of information that you can mine, to upsell people, to pull back in people who have left your business. It's important to have those lists. One of the first things I also do is develop a historic budget. Some companies are pretty organized around this and some aren't. And I find quite often business owners are a little shocked, when we develop the lists for what they spend on marketing over the last couple of years. This is critical to moving forward. You want to see, how much you've spent, and then figure out how much you need to spend to expand your business. And that doesn't always mean spending more money in the budget. It quite often is spending it differently or smarter. Next, we look at branded promotion. I mean, the hats, the t-shirts, the swag, the pens. Do you have those sorts of things? And if you do, a couple of questions. Do you order in bulk, or do you order 3 weeks before the golf tournament and end up having to pay twice as much for the hats as you would normally? Finally, we look at goodwill, charity. We all know, local businesses get hit all the time, with the cheerleaders, the football team, the booster club, the baseball teams. All of those are great, and it's great that people support their community. But it's also important to just have an idea of what you're spending. I generally advise people to set up a monthly budget so they can at least stay within certain parameters. So once we've looked at all those different things, all those tools, we now look at, does everything work? And that's pretty straight ahead. A lot of people have websites that are, haven't been updated for a year, and, buttons don't work, or pages are dead, or, we've got to make sure everything is working. Next, we look at, from a branding perspective, does everything match? Do you have the same logo, the same version of the logo on the hats, on the letterhead, on the website, on your ads in the newspaper? And then next, does everything make sense? So many people do marketing just because that's how their dad did it. And you know, it's a, you know, even from 5 years ago, times are different. Times change so fast anymore that these are things we really need to make sense. And something that worked 5 years ago, it's a good chance it does not work now in its format. So, and then finally, is it effective? I mean, are you actually putting money in and getting more money out based on sales? So that's what we look at for toolbox upgrades. And the goal here, of course, is to have all the tools that make sense for you to use. We want to make sure all the tools are in good shape. So we've talked about marketing plans. Here's my approach to marketing plans. Some of this some of these things everybody does, and some of these things get lost. The first one, of course, is defining who you're selling to. And while this kind of, you know, seems like a common sense thing, it can get a little more involved. And each one of these sections we'll get into some more details. So first you have your target market. Next you define your language, your messaging, your elevator speeches, your catchphrases, whatever. You've got the language together. Next, we look at the media, and that is what tools and mediums do you use to reach your customers, whether it's digital, newspapers, radio, you know, those sorts of things. Next, we look at lead capture. Now, the first three sections in here, the target market, messaging, and media, quite often that's as far as people go in terms of their marketing. Those are the three obvious things. But in today's day and age, you're gathering leads all over the place. Excuse me. You're gathering leads, you know, from trade shows, from opt-ins on your website, from contests that you run, from the fishbowl with business cards, to you know, contests, to Facebook, to, you know, all these different areas. You gather leads, and so there needs to be some method to capture those leads. And then moving ahead, the next step is once we have all these leads, once we've got a giant pool of you know, business card information, what do we do with it? And that is the lead nurturing system. Now, I'm a huge proponent of developing systems to do things. That's one of the reasons that many people are overwhelmed by marketing, because there's just so much stuff to do. But if you systemize things, then it takes a lot of that nervousness out of it, and you actually can follow some systems. So the lead nurturing systems are basically, once you get a lead, what do you do with it? And we'll get into that here in a moment. And then finally, well, not finally, but next we've got the closing. What is your method for closing sales? And this can be as simple as, you know, giving somebody a call and asking for the business, or it might be a process that gets started. It might be a series of emails. It might be, you know, booking a time for people to come in for a demo. It varies a little bit with each different kind of business, but essentially it's important as part of your marketing approach to have a system for closing. You know, it might be a script, whatever. We'll get into that in a moment. Now, next, you know, just about everybody I've ever worked with says we deliver a world-class product or a world-class service. And that's great, but what follows is, how do you know it's world-class, and how do you know it's consistently world-class? And the way to do that, again, is to have some kind of system for your delivery. And this could be as simple as, you know, having a checklist that goes onto every truck, you know, as people buy roofing products, say. There's a checklist with everything that needs to go on there, plus a case of water, plus, you know, a couple, 3 hats, plus, you know, whatever it may be. But these kinds of delivery services ensure that you're doing things systematically and, better still, consistently. So you've got a new guy in the shop who's, you know, doing whatever he does. Part of his training, of course, needs to be, here's how we deliver our service. And then you've got your checklists. So once we've made the sale through closing and we've delivered it through delivery, next we want to have a plan for increasing customer value. And basically, it's far less expensive to upsell a current customer than it is to find a new customer. I'm sure most of you have heard that. This gets into what are your systems to increase customer value, whether it be upselling or a subscription to things or whatnot. We'll get into that in a moment. And then the final piece of this is referrals. And referrals, when systematized, can be a massive boost for your business. Happy customers are going to be some of your best salesmen, so to speak. And so we'll look at ways to systematize that. So target market, obviously we're looking at demographics, you know, the gender, the location, you know, the obvious things. And then the psychographics, what motivates them, you know, what keeps them up awake at night. We look at behaviors, obviously what keeps them up at night. Where do they hang out? Now this is a pretty basic overview of this, but you basically want to get as deep a dive as possible. There's a number of business tools out there to help you do this. But basically, the common advice is that if people ask you who your audience is and you say, well, it's everybody, then chances are you're going to limit yourself. You're far better served by picking 2, 3, 4 very specific niches or niches, depending. You want to really narrow in and think of it as a sniper approach rather than a shotgun approach. The better you target your audience, the better you can reach them, especially when you get into digital situations. If you run a Facebook ad to everybody, nobody will see it. But if you really specialize it, highly specialize it, then you can reach the people you want to reach. Now, of course, you can have a number of different target audiences, but if you approach each target audience very specifically, you're going to have better success. So now we get into messaging. A few things to consider. Most companies are going to use industry-specific language, and you need to make sure that people understand that language. I'm sure we've all been on websites where they're using acronyms or they're using industry-specific language that I don't recognize. And if you don't recognize something, you're quite a lot quicker to turn it off or to leave. And so you want to be careful with industry language, and obviously you're writing content for your customers, not for the general public. So obviously you are going to use some industry language. Just make sure it's something that's pretty common. And next, you would be surprised how many people don't have a clear and concise offer for what they do. So it's a great exercise to sit down and just write out, you know, what problems do we solve? What is our offer? That will then translate through to all of your marketing materials, to your website, and you know, even your conversations. Next, you've got your elevator pitch, of course. When you've got 20 seconds to introduce yourself to somebody, say at a trade show, what do you do? You know, why do you do it? Who's your audience? And so it's important to have that prepared beforehand rather than winging it. When you wing this kind of stuff, it tends to change all the time and you miss out important pieces. The messaging also for upsells, for guarantees, it's important to have this kind of thing in writing so that you can give this all to your sales staff. You can make sure everybody within your company is saying the same thing, making the same promises, quoting the same guarantees. These things are critical to have consistency. Now let's talk about the media that you're using. And we'll start with, I think traditional is first, is that right? Yep. So of course this is radio, print, TV, billboards, yard signs, direct mail, trade shows. It's you know, it's a changing landscape depending on the size of the market that you're living in. I'm out here in West Nebraska, and even here, print is changing a lot, and doesn't have the same effectiveness that it once did. And yet certain demographics read the paper religiously. Older folks read the paper. If you want to reach, the over 70 audience, well, the newspaper is the way to do it. Radio, of course, depends on the kind of product you've got, and same with TV, same with billboards. A lot of people think of direct mail as kind of an old-fashioned method, and with all of the digital things coming into play, we find that direct mail actually is more effective than ever. Because think of it, there was a time years ago when you'd get a ton of mail every day, and half of it was junk mail, right? Some kind of print ad, postcard, a lumpy mail piece with a little magnifying glass in it, or something. That used to kind of get lost in the shuffle. Now we get a million emails every day, but we don't get nearly as much direct mail. Direct mail, of course, is where you're going to purchase a list. There's a number of people around the country that sell these lists, and you can highly target it. You can, get every particular kind of business of this size, that earns this much every year within a certain geographic area. And then you send them a series of postcards. And the whole idea is once they get a couple of postcards, you've got then a reason for your sales staff to give them a call and say, hey, did you get our postcard? It's a way to just stay on their radar, so that when you call them, they're gonna hopefully take your call. I mentioned lumpy mail. Lumpy mail is simply where you put something in an envelope, a little trinket or a pen or something. The open rates for mail are considerably higher when there's something lumpy in it. So people open up this lumpy mail, and they'll look at your offering. And of course, trade shows are great for certain kinds of businesses, and that's something to consider as well. Then of course, with digital advertising, there's a whole new world here. One thing about digital advertising that I love is the fact that it is the metrics on it are fantastic. If you place a Facebook ad, you'll know exactly how many people looked at it, how many people were exposed to it, how many people clicked on it, and you can measure your return on investment in a way that is really hard to do with print and radio. But some of the digital advertising methods, of course, are email marketing, whether it be newsletters, whether it be drip campaigns. A drip campaign is where somebody will opt into your website and put in their name and their email address, and then there's a series of emails that are automatically generated every 3 days, every week, every month, something like that. And so it's a way to keep your message in front of people, and develop offers and such. Obviously, Google AdWords is a big one. People getting onto the top of the page through pay-per-click ads. LinkedIn ads are becoming more and more popular, and there's a whole method to target people through LinkedIn, which is fascinating. And LinkedIn is definitely a way to target individuals with certain business titles to get your message to people. So there might be a big company somewhere that you want to get in the door. Through LinkedIn, you can find the HR director or the CEO or the sales manager, whatever person needs to be targeted. Obviously, we've got Facebook boosts and Facebook ads. And of course, boosts are where you're preaching to your choir. You just reach more of the choir. And then Facebook ads are targeted to people who are not attached to your business page. And there's a whole art and science to Facebook ads. Facebook ads I find are wonderful because the reach is fantastic. You can be so specific in terms of how you're targeting people, and you can spend $5 a day. Now, I'm in a market here, most of my clients are not big companies. They're going after people within a 100-mile radius. And Facebook ads work great for that. You can target very specific, and you can target specific regions or cities or counties, and it's pretty awesome. The follow ads are basically, you've experienced this, where you look at you look at a car dealership at, Cherokees, Grand Cherokees, and then for the next 2 months, you see Grand Cherokees popping up on your browser. Those can be great. They can be annoying. As most of these things, you need to be careful that you're supporting what people are looking for as opposed to annoying them. Banner ads are kind of a thing of the past, but you still see it sometimes, in my opinion anyway. And obviously YouTube videos, there's a whole world of search within YouTube that is pretty fantastic. And there's a huge value to developing video series, related to what you're doing. Geofencing, yeah, let's talk about geofencing. Good question. Thank you, Chelsea. Geo, where you can have people show up in a specific location that triggers digital ads. Now, I've worked with this mostly with apps. So if somebody has an app and they happen to be within a 10-block radius even, then they will be alerted of, say there's a special event happening. To my understanding, most of the other things we're discussing here have the capability of using some kind of geofencing, where if somebody is in a certain location, they get picked up in the ads, or they get picked up in some kind of like a text broadcast. And that's probably about the depth of what I do. I haven't done a great deal of geofencing, so hopefully that gives you a little bit of information anyway. So lead capture, one of the questions that most businesses need to answer is, do they have some kind of customer relationship management tool, a CRM? And this is, it can be Salesforce. I use Insightly, Zoho, Act, and there's a ton more of these. There's a lot of these. And basically, it's a place where you put all of your leads. You get all of your email addresses, your warm leads. You've got Insightly that I use has a nice pipeline tool, and all of them do. But basically, it gives you a sense of who you've talked to, who you need to call, where they are in the sales process. And it gives you a central place to where you can manage what's going on with your sales team. This is where sales teams and marketing teams, where they really meet, because marketing is out there trying to gather up leads in a lot of ways, and then that's where you can hand it off to your sales team. Now, a lot of small businesses don't have a bunch of separate teams. They've got 3 people doing everything. That's what I see a lot, certainly in this market. So this is just a tool to stay organized. How many people have cleaned out their desk and found business cards from a trade show 7 months ago, and you're like, oh yeah, I was going to follow up, or I was going to send them a package or a proposal or something. Using a CRM allows you to stay on top of that. You leave for Christmas, you come back, your head's elsewhere, and then you look at your lead list. It's like, oh yeah, these are the 20 people I need to contact. So this is just a little flow chart about how a CRM can work. So in the middle, of course, we see the database, the CRM, and then on the left are some of the various ways that you get information. So this is where you put all your current customers, your new customers on an ongoing basis, purchased lists, mailing lists anyway. Now you couldn't, it's different in terms of purchasing email lists. You can't buy email lists and then send stuff out, or you'll get spanked. But and of course, business cards, trade show lists, or wherever you might happen to gather up additional things. And then you've got website opt-in as well. One of the must-haves for a website is a place for people to opt in. Typically, companies will offer something in exchange for people's email address. So that might be, a white paper, a free report, or a hat, or a T-shirt, or a discount. Give us your email address and come in for a free hamburger, or whatever it may be. most people get hit by this stuff so much that you typically need to offer a little incentive, to sign up for an opt-in. And then typically an opt-in will trigger some kind of monthly newsletter, a sales letter, but also it goes directly, as you can see, that information goes into your CRM, and it also goes into your email program. Now, the email program, like MailChimp or Constant Contact, is typically outside of your CRM. There are some that include it, but the ones that I use are separate entities. And so within, say, a MailChimp, you create your templates, with your branding, your logo, and then you've got a template that you can use when you send out a newsletter every month or every quarter. You can also use that same template, and you can automate this so that when somebody opts in to your website, that triggers a series of emails. And the better you know your audience, the more highly targeted you can make these emails. So for example, on the website opt-in, it might have a drop-down box where they pick what kind of customer they are. They can kind of self-identify in specific areas. And then you can have an email series specific to that particular area. And you can send them, 3, 4, 5 emails, whatever it may be. And keep in mind with these emails, as long as there's valuable content there, generally speaking, people don't mind getting them. But if it's just a sales pitch after sales pitch, people are going to opt out. So so you want to be careful what you send people. Make sure that there's something of value there, that that's important. So then once we've got this CRM system and the email program, you've got all this information organized. Now what we can do with it, looking on the right side here, is generate direct mail pieces, postcards. You buy a list from Info USA, and then put together a series of postcards, and of course direct emails, direct sales, phone calls, and then opt-in email sequences, which we talked about just a moment ago. So the lead nurture is just kind of the whole process that I just described. The lead capture is where you get all the information, and then the lead nurture is where you work that list through these different methods. And then the closing system. So we mentioned earlier, this might be a part of your sales training, a sales script, and also something to measure. But when you have you've brought people into your system, you've been sending them stuff, and now what's the final piece? What is your system to close them? And perhaps it's a script, a checklist, a process. Maybe you bring them in for a test drive, or you send them a demo of your product. Now, this doesn't have to be rocket science, but it should be reasonably carved in stone, so that when you get the new sales guy comes on board, you've got the script, you've got the process, and you know exactly how you go about in closing the sale. And then the metrics are important for anybody, whether it be a sales manager or an owner. You want to know how the system is going. And when you're able to look at your marketing from here's how many ads we ran, here's how many leads we generated, here's how many people made it into the sales funnel, and then this is how many people actually bought our product. This allows you to create real measurements in terms of return on investment. Now, let's talk about ROI just for a moment here, return on investment. It's frustrating when you spend a lot of money on marketing, say with newspapers or radio stations. They typically give you huge numbers as to what their readership is, how many people hear the station, but it's really hard to measure that stuff. Obviously, with digital marketing, you can put $100 in, and then you can see exactly how many people came out of it. And if you're set up correctly, you can tell what your sales were as well. The optimal situation is where you put $100 in and you get $200 out in sales. So that's the goal. The delivery system, again, similar to the sales system, it's about having a system, having a checklist, making sure that your delivery is matching the promises that marketing is making. And then this allows you to measure things as well. Now, once you've got somebody within your customer list, this is where you want to provide them with upsells, with maintenance contracts or subscriptions or upgrades. And if you put this into your system, then this makes this happen more often, basically. So, if somebody purchases something, 15th of January, is there something calendarized or something automated where where you check in on them in 6 months and make sure that the product they purchased is working, and that's where you might offer them an upsell or a subscription or upgrades. Again, this is about just creating systems and checklists around some of these different things. And then referrals is the final piece of the marketing plan. What are your systems to encourage referrals? Obviously, when people buy something, it's best to strike while the iron is hot in terms of getting testimonials or asking for referrals. If this is worked into your sales script or into your closing script, even better, then that's what I'm referring to here. They've just signed on the dotted line, they're buying whatever they bought, and that's a great time to find out, who else do you know that might want to make the same kind of purchase, and is there an incentive? Is there a finder's fee? If you can help me sell this to somebody that there's money or some kind of incentive there for you, and this works into the systems and the scripts, and and hopefully it's automated, depending on the nature of your business. And then this finally breaks down into reviews. You want to get those reviews, and the best time to do that is when they're a happy customer and when they're still kind of excited about having just made a purchase. I use some automation where my clients can give me a name and an email address, and then I plug that into a system through Google My Business. Jesse, you might offer the same thing, but it's a nice way to do it so that people get an email with the box already open, provided they're logged into Google, and then they can click the 1 through 5 stars and they can write a review. And if you get reviews that are 4 to 5 stars, then that automatically goes onto your Google listing. And if they're bad reviews, you get an email rather than it being posted to the public, so you can actually address it and you can manage what kind of referrals you're getting. Okay. So the operations plan is simply how to take all these different systems and moving parts and putting it into a system so that you can delegate it and you can calendarize it. This is fairly straight ahead, so we can move on here. You can see you've got a spreadsheet that lists what the tasks are, how often it needs to happen, who completes it, is there anybody else that helps them do it? And then once we've got all of these tasks on a spreadsheet, then the next slide, please. Then the next step is just you plug that into your calendar, and so that every second Tuesday, this pops up, and we can see what the steps are to do it. And so whether you're doing it, whether you're delegating it to somebody else within the company, or even some kind of outside support, this is a way to make sure everything gets done. And then through your calendar section, you can even track, set it up as a task, and you see that it happened on a given day. Next, we look at the marketing calendar. The marketing calendar is a way to map out what you're doing and then make sure that all of the different marketing aspects are on the same page. So we can see here, well, yeah, that's pretty straight ahead as well. Marketing budget is all about having a fixed marketing budget to start with, and that ties in with media contracts and with what your charity donations are. One quick comment about marketing budget is just because you have an amount of money allotted for marketing doesn't necessarily doesn't mean you need to spend that much. I'm a big fan of the idea that you figure out what works and you keep doing it, and the other stuff that's not getting a good return on investment, drop it. This whole marketing plan here, everything we're discussing here, should go into a big binder so that all the information is in one place, either that or a shared drive, where you've got all of your marketing contacts, your annual contracts, area maps from print and radio, a media binder, all the stuff that they give you, and that's pretty straight ahead. Management reports. When you have all of this information together, then this allows you the ability to give the boss some very concise and clear marketing reports. I know we're a little tight on time, so I'm not going to get into a huge amount of detail, but you can get a sense. It's marketing upgrades, your media activity, budget reports, your database list, has it increased, sales database reports, upcoming events and campaigns, and then digital marketing reports. Now, in the next few slides here, we've got a sample of what some of these website reports look like. We can blast through these pretty quick. The first one is the Google ranking, and that's basically your obviously your Google ranking. Next is Reputation Manager. Now, I use a tool. I mean, there's a number of tools out there to do this. The tool that I use allows you to see at a glance how you're doing on all these different reputation sites, and it's pretty useful. So you can compare it month to month and see, if you're getting more likes or more reviews or more, star ratings. Next is citations. Citations are what drive your ranking on Google My Business. So obviously there's you want to get all the elements and all the information in there, but then the more citations you have, the better your score will be. And citations are simply third-party business listings, like Yellow Pages or Facebook or Yelp, and there's hundreds of them, and most of them you've never heard of. But by having these citations in there is going to increase your rank. If your competition has 50 citations, you want to have 75 or 100. It just helps with having you show up higher on the Google Maps. And of course, Google My Business is just a wonderful tool. It tells you how many people, found you without actually listing your name through discovery, how many direct, how many called you, how many visited your website, and this just tells you. I mean, it's a great example of why it's important to have Google My Business set up. I'm sure Jesse could probably talk all day about that. Google Analytics is pretty straight ahead as well. Google Analytics gets crazy deep, and so what I use is that there's a few analytics that I look for in terms of usage, and depending on how you're set up, you can track conversions, and I mean you can go way down the rabbit hole. And some businesses that's appropriate. Most you don't need to go quite that deep. Facebook is pretty straight ahead as well. Page views and likes. For companies I work with that do Facebook ads, I generate these reports to where you can see what the ad was, and you can see the measure, what the reach was, how many users, how many people are commenting on it, and it's just great to compare different ads, different kinds of ads, to see how well it went. So the final thing here, when you're organized like this, you can stop worrying about the marketing. You can put existing tools like websites to better use, spend less money on marketing and see far better results, have a system that makes it easy to delegate marketing tasks, and have a way to measure things. So this is the goal of all of this, is to have these systems in place so that you can worry about other things. And of course, you want to make more money. That's always the goal. So these are services that I provide. I hope this has opened your eyes maybe to some things that you can do yourself. Obviously, if if you're looking for help, I would love to talk to you. I do consulting where it's done for you, coaching where I show you how to do it, individual services and tools where I help out with certain little elements. And I've also got a reporting package that's automated. That's pretty sweet. So if you'd like to find out more, I would invite you to have a look at dbodigitalmarketing.com. The /webinar, that will give you access to a free trial for what I described. That free trial is basically you can get a month's worth of free reports for how everything is going with your digital marketing, and to see if it's something that works. Beyond all of that, I would invite you, if you go to my website, there's a lot of links to book a call. I'd be more than happy to have a chat with you about your specific situation, whether it leads to business with me or not. I'm not too concerned about that. But if I can help you solve some problems, I'd love to do that. So with that, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and here's to your success.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Don, so much for presenting today. It was all great information. My contact info is on the screen now. Like Don said, we are a little short on time. If there are any questions, there is a couple minutes where you can still hop on the chat box and ask those. If not, or if you're not wanting to right now or you're calling in, my email is Jessie, Jessie, @grownebraska.org. So you can always email me your questions. Or schedule an appointment. So if you're wanting to learn more about Grow, we do offer some Google My Business trainings. So if you're wanting more information about Grow Nebraska and how to get involved that way, definitely feel free to email me. But otherwise, that's all for today. So thank you for joining the Grow Nebraska Foundation on this month's third Thursday training. Another shout out to Don Osborne with DBO Digital Marketing for being today's presenter. We will have a recording of this presentation ready for you later today. So everyone have a happy Thursday.